And the question that I'll ask today over and over again, what story do you choose? Your experiences, your reality are created by the perception of your observations. Perception of your observations. In other words, in order for anything to become material, what you would call real, there has to be consciousness. There has to be you present, period. Nothing exists if consciousness is not there. The moment consciousness is there, the moment something is being observed, it becomes so. The next level of that beautiful understanding is that how do you want to perceive what you observe? That's how reality is created. It's created by consciousness, observing. I'm not just making this shit up. I mean, this is absolute hardcore physics. Reality comes from energy, then into light, then into waveforms. Everything is waveforms. The waveforms are nothing but potentials, laying or there, present for the observer to show up. The moment your consciousness shows up, the moment you're present, the moment you observe, those waveforms suddenly turn into particles. Particles shape physical reality. Now you're dancing, you're within your reality. It's that simple. I mean, it's really simple, but how you observe it is the key. The physicists haven't figured that one out yet, but they will. You can observe it as a dumbass. You can observe it as a grand being, and that's exactly what you will get. Let's take a moment to for you to feel into the sacredness of this year, 2023. For you. It's a year of bringing a lot of old things together. It's going to be a year of big stories, shifting stories, big things happening in your life. What is your story for 2023?
My story for this year is embodying my enlightenment.
Good.
I'm doing what I'm here to do. Mm-hmm. So even if a day feels not so good, just trust.
I am going to relax into realization.
Good.
And this is the year I'm going to get a Lamborghini.
I'm looking forward to really be connected with myself and be conscious that I'm connected.
Really? Doing nothing.
As little as possible.
It's good to hear different ideas of the story for 2023. It doesn't really matter one way or the other, but just remember that ultimately it's all about your perspective. That's exactly what you're going to end up experiencing. Everybody have a multitude of stories. They're there, they're yours, but they're not really yours. They're out there. You can sense the rumbling. You can sense the storylines. You can sense the intensity at times. Everybody has them. But the soul also knows there's one very important story right now that is really the guiding force for all the rest of these, and it's your lifetime. It's right now. And imagine all these stories out there acting, living out. And then imagine that suddenly something happens in, let's say, 2023. Something happens. And suddenly, if you imagine every story there's like a million sheep out in the pasture, each going its own direction, and some wandering aimlessly, some trying to assemble in little groups or packs, but there's millions of sheep out there all over the pasture, and you look at it and go, oh, that's what a mess. I'm responsible for all this. But something happens in 2023, and suddenly you have a magic flute in your hands, you, the human, in this lifetime. Take a deep breath, and it sounds terrible, of course, but at least you're playing the flute. And all of a sudden you look over, whoa, all these sheep. Suddenly their ears go up. And suddenly you realize you're the Pied Piper. It's not just a children's story, it's your story. And they're all following you. All of these stories, all the sheep, all the stories that are in your orbit, your past, future stories too. So instead of all the stories being smattered all over the cosmos and continuing to play out, suddenly they come into alignment, into flow with you. That's why the soul has a particular interest, because you're the key to this whole thing. Bringing your stories home. Life is just a story. And all this is just a story. Tragic at times, painful, blissful at other times, breakthroughs, but it's all just a story. And it's all based on the perspective of the observer, of you. How do you want your story? You can change that story anytime. When you do, when you choose now, consciously, you choose your perspective, no longer going, I don't know what's going to happen, it's destiny. I don't. When you choose your story, all the sheep, they line up. All the other stories, all the energies now are there to support that story. Everything here, right now, is just potentials in waveforms. That's all it is. It comes from your energy to light to waveforms. The waveforms are vast. They're not little tiny, like a radio spectrum waveform. They're huge waveforms, and there's billions of them, and they're just sitting here, waiting for the observer, waiting for the conscious being. The conversion of waveforms to particles, particles to reality, reality to what you experience in your story. Isn't that airy-fairy stuff? It's quantum physics. And you can change your story whenever you want. Your story can be one of great difficulty and hardship, overcoming all the odds, putting up with bad families, with a wretched life and bad partners. And it could be, or it could be that you chose to come into this planet fast. You chose a family that you're going to leave pretty quickly, and then you went out on your own to really experience your soul passion in this lifetime. Which story do you want? The poor me story, or do you want the amazing and relatively dramatic story of coming in here so determined to do what you came here for in this lifetime? To be here at the planet at the time of the machines, to be an embodied master. You choose that perspective, that's what happens. I want you to be very clear, it's all just a story, and it is changeable. When you realize that it's just a matter of your perspective, how do you want to see your story? We'll talk later about the implications on all things. But right now, let's take a deep breath, and you don't have to work on it. And just allow it. Other than, how would you like your story going forward?